Hello and welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. My name is Natalie Himmelrich. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is completely self-funded, produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmelrich. Consider making a small donation to support the podcast. Go to bit.ly/support, capital G, capital T, and podcast. I repeat, bit.ly/supportgt podcast. Thank you so much. And for more information, please visit Natalie's website, join the podcast Instagram page, and subscribe to the newsletter to receive updates on future episodes. Welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. I'm your host, Natalie Himmelrich, and you're listening to episode 6 in the solo series in our Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month mini series. This series is dedicated to exploring the many layers of grief after pregnancy and infant loss. From the body's memories and the waves of emotion to the ways we set boundaries, we hold love and find meaning again. So if you've been following along, you know that each episode pairs insight for those who grieve and those who support. If you haven't been listening from the beginning, I recommend you start with episode 142, where I lay out how pregnancy and infant loss awareness came about. That's sort of the start. And then it continues with episode 144, which is the first replay, and then alternating with solo episodes like this one every second day. So today's episode touches both directly, those who grieve and those who support. We'll talk about permission to grieve in your own way and why there is no single path or single right path through loss, and how comparison can harm healing. And on the other side, we'll speak about how supporting partners and the extended family can help the understanding that reaches through the whole family system to each person that is mourning differently. One of the hardest truths about grief is that it's unpredictable and personal. There is no map, no timeline, and no correct emotional sequence. So after pregnancy and infant loss, you might feel sadness, anger, guilt, relief maybe, or love, or even numbness. And sometimes all within the same hour. And yet, so many people judge their own grief. They think, I should be crying more or less. I shouldn't be feeling this way. Others have it worse. But grief is not a competition or a performance. It's simply a response to love having no place to go. So you are allowed to grieve in your own way, at your own pace, for as long as you need. So if you need to talk about your baby every day, that's okay. And if you find yourself silent and internal and reflective, that's okay too. Some parents find comfort in community, in groups and shared stories, and others heal in solitude. Some are drawn to rituals and memory boxes, and others find peace in nature, creativity, or stillness. Because the way you grieve is shaped by your personality, also your culture, your faith, your body, and your lived experience, and it's yours alone. So I want you to hear this very clearly. There is no right way to grieve. And if you believe there is a right way, then it's just because of what you've been hearing, learning through your upbringing. But it's not the truth that there is a right way. The only wrong way is to deny your feelings, your needs, or to compare them to someone else's. So if you are a parent grieving, please give yourself permission. Permission to rest, to cry, to smile, to feel joy again, to have bad days without guilt. And to grieve differently than another grieving parent might. Your love for your baby is personal and it lives through all of it. And so importantly, if you're supporting someone who has lost their baby through pregnancy and infant loss, remember your role is not to decide how they should grieve, but to create space for how they do it. As a supporter, it's also part to support partners and the extended family. Because pregnancy and infant loss doesn't just affect one person, also not just a couple. It ripples through the whole family. And each person carries a different relationship to the baby and therefore a different grief. What I always say is that the grief is determined by the relationship between the person who's grieving the loss of the person that they're grieving. So partners often experience a painful mismatch in how they process the loss. And that is because even though the baby or the child that they lost is the same, their relationship, their meaning of the relationship to the baby is different. So one might need to talk and cry, while the other focuses on tasks or being strong. These differences can cause misunderstanding, even conflict, especially when both are hurting deeply. That is one of the most pivotal understandings that couples, therefore the name of my first book, Grieving Parents Surviving Loss as a Couple, need to understand. Their differences in grieving is not a difference in the love or the love that they hold for that baby. It is because they are a different person and the meaning and the relationship they had to the child is different. If you're grieving as a couple, try to remember, different doesn't mean wrong. You're both expressing the same heartbreak through different languages. If you want to know about this specific topic, I highly recommend Grieving Parents Surviving Loss as a Couple. There's a paragraph and a chapter exactly on the different ways that people grieve. So you might say, I grieve differently, but I'm still grieving too. Or, can we find small moments to meet in the middle, to talk, hold hands, light a candle? Support each other's coping styles without trying to change them. That compassion builds connection instead of distance. Now, if it is difficult because what your partner needs is not what you can give them, then it is really recommended to find support outside the couple. Because truthfully, both of you are grieving. And it might be a stress on the couple to expect one of them to be the supporter of the other, because it might not be possible for one to be supportive in that moment. Extended family members, they also grieve, such as grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles. They may not have met the baby, but they too imagine the future that now won't be. They too need space for their grief. But they must also remember that the parent's loss sits at the center, and that the most supportive role they can play is to listen, validate, and show up without imposing their own timelines or beliefs. As I mentioned in a previous episode, there is an article on my website on the circles of support, where it clearly describes at the center of the loss, in this case, are the parents, surrounding them the family members, and so forth. And so the further out you are, the more you have to look outside even for support and not dump your pain inside. Because as I said here, the parent's loss sits at the center and they need the most support. If you, for example, as a grandparent or a relative, need support, go further outside. Get support from a counselor, from another friend that might listen to you. Don't dump it on the parents inside. So if you're a grandparent or relative, you might simply say, I miss this baby too, but I know this pain is different for you. I'm here when you need me. Grief changes family dynamics, sometimes drawing people closer, other times creating distance. So communication and respect are what helps families find their way back to one another. No one gets it perfect, but honest, compassionate presence goes a long way. So to close for today, I'd love you to remember that grief, especially after the loss of a baby, is one of the most personal journeys a person can take. And there is no single roadmap, and that is okay. So give yourself and others permission to grieve in the way that feels right. And trust that even when it looks different, the love underneath is the same. And remember that every person touched by this loss, whether it's the parents, partners, grandparents, friends, they all carry a piece of it in their own way. So when we allow room for those differences, we can invite more compassion, connection, and healing. If you want to know more about the topic of the differences in grieving, I recommend Grieving Parents Surviving Loss as a Couple. There's a chapter in it solely dedicated to this. So thank you for joining me for today's episode of our Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month mini-series. The final episode will be released on October 30th. And we talk about carrying hope alongside grief and sustaining support beyond the early weeks. For resources, my books Grieving Parents and the Healing Steps course can be found by visiting nataliehimmerich.com. If today's episode has offered comfort or insight, please share it with someone who might need to hear these words. Take gentle care, and I'll meet you again soon. Thanks for listening to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. If you'd like to be updated on future episodes, please subscribe to my newsletter on nataliehimmerich.com. If you need grief support, please contact me for a 30 minutes free discovery session. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmerich. To support this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. And remember to keep breathing. I promise it will get easier.